What is happening, everybody? Welcome to another edition of State Champs Extra Points, the one time I get to wear my Extra Point shirt. So, since we don't really have that show anymore on TV. But it's great to be here. John Kidd is not here today. He has a day off, but Scott Burnstein, Matt Mowery, I'm Lorne Plant. We are here. Kevin Trzynski on the ones and twos, keeping it down. Yes, exactly. You can pop in once in a while. You might hear the voice of God every once in a while. I do want to tell you that the sponsors of this fine program, Lawrence Technological University, another 65-0 win against Eastern Michigan's club team this week. So they are off to an incredible start. They actually have a bye week this week, so they're not going to play, and then they go to Northern Michigan. So that's going to be next week, and Coach Duvendek used to be at Northern Michigan, so they set that up.
Are they playing Northern Michigan?
I think
or the club?
I think they're playing Northern Michigan.
Okay.
So yeah, that will be their first real dose of reality. And the MHSA is also a sponsor of this program. MHSA.com. That's really where I go for scores, schedules, especially for football. If you want to kind of get updated, I'd say that's usually your best resource. Obviously, having a large Twitter timeline on Friday nights will get you all you need to know as well. But Hungry Howie's also is the sponsor of the program. Go to doughrazor.com if you need to have any kind of fundraiser. It's super easy, and it's been a great program, and we're really the only group that promotes it. So I think it's something you should check out if you need to do it. And again, you'd be helping out State Champs, and we can keep doing more of these shows. So games featured on State Champs TV this weekend. We're going to talk about those right now. You can watch them on our website, statechampsnetwork.com. They're all up. You can check it out, of course, on individual game clips or the full show on YouTube. And Facebook, Twitter's got all that stuff, too. We kind of throw it everywhere. So this week we're going to do our Week 5 recap. We're going to have Matt Mowery's rankings updates. And we're going to talk about some former star standouts who had a great weekend at the college level. So we always want to kind of update you with what's happening with some of our former superstars of Michigan high school football. So let's start with Chippewa Valley and Macomb, Dakota. Chip Valley goes to 5-0. In Matt's recent rankings, he's got them at 7 in the state right now. They took on a Macomb, Dakota, who drops to 19. They are 4-1 on the year now as they lose 24-17.
They rallied in this game.
Yeah. So this was myself. This was Sean Belesian, and it was Matt Mowery who predicted this one. You thought the Toko Magic would work. And again, good game, and they rallied, but it was too little too late.
Yeah, Chippewa Valley is just kind of a machine right now, and just kind of checking off, for the schedule. Whoever you're putting in front of them, they're beaten and playing really good football. And like I said, I anticipate this team putting together a long run.
You said they would lose this one, but they would not lose another one
until Ford Field. Yeah.
So are you revising that part of the prediction, or?
Well,
should we just not trust your predictions now at all?
If anything, it should embolden the fact that they're playing at the Division I level about as good as anybody.
Well, yeah, and this is a team that it certainly is not one that, for all that their record is unblemished and gaudy looking, it's not a team that's not been tested. I mean, week 1 they had to beat a tough Saline team on the road. That Eisenhower game was into the fourth quarter before it was settled. This game obviously came down to a defensive stand at the end. Those are the kind of tests as you go along. Yeah, you're going to have some where you have, your star sitting on the bench in the second half, and that's not, ideal, but you certainly build depth that way. But this is also how you get ready for the playoffs, and you get ready to make a long run by running a gauntlet like this and getting through these games. And certainly, it always helps if you're one of those teams that you maybe get a wake-up call at some point and you get upset. But these are mini wake-up calls too, where you get, a team takes you right down to the wire, and so it keeps your kids invested all the way throughout. And these are the kind of games that make you better for the playoffs.
Yeah. Once again, you can watch the highlights right now at our website, statechampsnetwork.com, or on social media. One of the things I really like about Tommy Schuster and the offense is that Marcel Lewis had a catch, a nice catch, actually, in the touchdown for a big guy. He's athletic.
2 years ago, when I noticed Marcel Lewis the first time I saw him, I noticed him as a tight end.
Right.
And then they're like, no, he's being recruited as a linebacker.
Right. Right, and then Chenault and Kimson, that both had touchdowns, and they, again, they
so
kind
many
of
weapons.
Yeah, they're distributing well. Everyone's getting in on the action. So how do you game plan for that when you're not just dealing with one guy?
You want to take this away? We'll go here.
Yeah.
You want to take that away? We'll go there. Yeah, it's a little shell game that they can play with that offense. And yeah, you're right. The two-headed running back attack, and then the Schuster and tight ends, and you've got the whole and David Ellis. Obviously, you can't leave him out. And yeah, it's a lot of weapons that Scotty Merchant has at his disposal this year.
Yeah. Mark Toko did have a good game.
Yeah.
I mean, he threw for over 200 yards. Sure. He had 59 on the ground. And, again, I think these two will probably meet in the district finals or something along those lines and do it again. And we'll just see Warren Mott's next up for Chip Valley. This is not a Warren Mott team that's I think has been as good as it has been the last few years.
Sure.
And that's a crossover, right?
Yeah,
they're in the white.
The MAC goes into
They
kind
used
of a
to be red,
crossover.
yeah.
Everybody steps out of their divisional play this week for for a
Dakota
crossover.
should do well against Utica Ford.
Ford,
I don't think that's going to be much of an issue. But again, congratulations, Chip Valley. So they are again. They're still at 7. You've got them kind of locked in right there, but a solid top 10 team.
Yeah.
And
It's hard to move anybody up and down when
I
nobody
know.
in the top 10 is losing at this point.
Yeah, I hear you. Detroit Cody and Detroit Mumford was the game that I went to. This is a very interesting game. So obviously they play at 4 o'clock. So it was a beautiful day, but very, very windy. So I didn't know if they were going to be able to throw the ball as much as they did. Tosh Stewart had a good game for Mumford, but Cody, kind of had a. Mumford came within like 6 points right at the end of the half, and then it was on the. And I don't have this play because the scoreboard was screwed up. The marker didn't switch over on the fourth, so they had them lined up on one side. So I go all the way over to shoot another angle, and then I go behind. So anyway, Alexander White had a 69-yard touchdown run that I just didn't get because I was from behind, and it was a mess. But he had a really good game, and but I will give all the credit to Mumford. They were down 2 scores with last 10 minutes of the game. They came back, scored with 37. They did not lead the entire game. It was a big win for them, and they have. I didn't realize this at the time. They've beaten them the last 4 years. So it's funny because Coach Norman for Cody, he's like, he and Don Show English are best friends. He's like, but not today. And there was a lot of trash talking going on before it was great. It was just a fun atmosphere, and the Cody kids were fired up.
I mean, you gotta put Taj Stewart in that conversation for one of the best playmakers, one of the best quarterbacks in the PSL. Obviously, people know about Daquan Finn, and they know about Jalen Graham and the new kid Sebastian at Cass. They're starting to know a little bit more about Renaissance's Raekwon Beal, but you got to put Taj up there, in that same category. And he's electric. He's a kid that throws, from the tape that I've watched, throws really nice mid-range passes.
Yeah.
He can dink and dunk you. He can beat you with his wheels, and then if you let him, he's gonna beat you with the deep pass.
Yeah, it was. If you watch the highlights, and you can at statechampsnetwork.com, he had some really nice balls in the clutch. Running kind of that no huddle kind of offense that they were doing at the end, the hurry up. And threw some beautiful balls. There were some nice catches, but he put it where they needed to be.
He rolls out of the pocket real well.
Yeah.
And, he was real efficient. It was like 11 of 14, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, another big game. Big game that
this was a statement game.
Yes, Davison and Grand Blanc.
Very much so.
Yes, so it was you and I who took the cards in this one, and they went in, and again, you can watch these highlights. Just put on a clinic.
Davidson's playing as well as anybody in the state right now.
Yeah, they win 49-7 to stay undefeated.
And we've talked a lot about Cannon Hall, but a guy that I want to shout out that I noticed in week 1 is their running back Mike Jamerson, who came over from, I believe, Flint Kearsley.
Okay.
And he's a guy that's he's fleet of foot. He's a change of pace guy.
Yeah.
He can get it between the
I
tackles.
watched him at the PKC. You can see he's got.
And he's
talent,
slippery.
Yeah.
So he ran for $160 and 2 touchdowns, and You add that with what Cannon Hall can do with his arm. He had 4 touchdowns.
He
right?
was
Through 4
really
touchdowns?
impressive.
Yeah,
You watch
4
the
touchdowns,
highlights.
2
Cannon
15
Hall was running that show. And again, in a hostile environment.
Yeah, and that's a kid. Again, we keep talking about this week after week. We have these guys who are just putting up numbers left and right, and Cannon Hall is probably somebody who at least we've got to keep on the
The
watch
radar.
for the watch
This
list
kid could
for
Mr.
Mr. Football. Yeah.
This kid could, again, I've said this a number of times, but everyone gets caught up in the hype about the Division I offers and the Power Conference offers. Cannon Hall's going to Northwood, and I could
To
first
wrestle, I believe, right?
No,
Or does he go to
I,
football?
that's what
Does
I
he-
thought when
yeah.
I first talked to him. But he's like, "No, I'm going
No,
there to play
for football?
quarterback."
Okay.
When I first talked to him this year at the PKC, I could see this kid, being a star in the GLIAC, and going to Northwood and becoming a starter there, by his sophomore junior year, and really making an impact.
Those are the kids that blow up in the GLIAC. I mean,
Yeah.
you still have the guys who are, the prototypical size and specimens, but you have those guys that are maybe a little bit of a, square peg who don't fit the mold necessarily, but are players, and they go to the GLIAC. Brian Kelly made a killing on those kind of players.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was at Grand Valley. You have a large chip on your shoulder?
Yeah,
Would you like to
exactly.
come take that out on the rest of the league
Yes.
with us?
And you're a
Oh,
really
yeah,
good
sure.
football player that's being ignored by the bigger programs.
Right. Just because you're not
We'll
6'5",
take- we'll plug
250.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It was very, very impressive. And Davison is, again, when we're talking Division I, boy, I'd like to see a Davison-Chip Valley matchup at some point in the playoffs. That would be pretty exciting.
Again, we've talked about it on the show before. You got a team that had to overcome the loss of their coach,
Yeah.
who had come in and instilled a culture there, and Coach Zim, Coach Weingartz comes over here and is just you talk about not missing a beat.
I know.
and improving on what you've already the foundation you've already laid. People thought they were going to take a step back because of Tariq Reed not being there.
Correct.
Well,
That-
they
that's
lost a
not
lot,
happening.
and it wasn't just him. They lost a lot
Right.
of players. They were replacing a lot of people.
And then, I know I'm repeating myself for people that have seen the show, but every time we talk about Davison, I keep bringing this up, but they have like 23 kids on the roster.
Right.
They're under 30 kids on the varsity roster.
Right.
And so you got a lot of kids having to play both ways.
Yeah.
That speaks to the ability to train, the ability to prepare, their stamina.
Right.
So it's just real credit to what Coach Weingartz is doing there.
Well, and I think the thing that's surprising is not that they're undefeated at this point, because that could certainly have happened. I think we all thought that was conceivable at the beginning of the season. We thought it was less probable.
Yeah,
But
to be undefeated, I
Right.
wouldn't have gone there.
But the margin of victory,
I
I
know.
think that's the part that just makes you go,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
Because I don't think we expected this one to be a lopsided game. Kind of
No.
like we also didn't expect Grand Blanc Carmen Ainsworth last week to be
Right.
a lopsided game.
Right.
And these are the ones that are kind of separating now. Grand Blanc's got to play Lapeer next week, and then I believe after that, after maybe 2 weeks, is Davison Lapeer,
Yeah.
which will be the showdown.
Yeah.
And obviously Lapier's got to get there undefeated, and Davison has to get there undefeated. But that's going to be a scrap.
Yeah.
And
Which is great. It
yeah,
prepares
absolutely.
you for the playoffs.
Yep, and
what it's
that's
about.
we talked about and Grand Blanc is not a bad team.
Yeah,
that
they're
came
not
in
gonna
here.
go away.
They've been knocking people off
Yeah.
in the same fashion. They're not going to go away, and so at this point they get the chance to play a little bit of spoiler and get themselves right back in the race.
Yeah.
But yeah, that Saginaw Valley League South with
Yeah.
those 4 teams. I mean, Carmen Ainsworth at this point, not a bad team,
Right.
even though they got took a couple of losses in the last couple of
Yeah,
weeks.
and even if they finish 5-4, can still get in the playoffs because of the quality
Right,
opponents.
and that's you like it when your conference brings in, especially when you're adding new, and we saw this with the KLA East when they brought
Yeah.
in those teams.
We're
You
seeing
like
it,
it when, coaches shake their heads about no breaks in this schedule, but that's what stuff that makes your team better. As long as it doesn't beat your team
Right.
into submission with injuries, that makes you better in the long run.
I agree. You have to say, what do we want to do?
Right.
Do we want to play in the state semifinals or something like that and feel that? Well, then this is what you have to do. You have to learn how your team can get up every week, because once you get in the playoffs, it's win or die.
every
It's
week.
win or
Yep.
go home, and every opponent is going to be a great opponent for the most part. Sometimes you get an escape something early, but after that, you're playing good teams who are playing good ball. So it's a matter of wills at that point. So all the credit to them. Kent City and Morley Stanwood was a game that we had on the show. We wanted to see Kent City, and man, did we see Kent City? You mentioned Geo Weeks and what he has been doing for them. 5 touchdowns, 241 yards, 42-7, just solid. I mean, and this kid, again, now he's the school's official leading rusher all time with over 3,000. He does it effortlessly.
He's a track kid too,
yeah,
isn't he?
Yeah.
Fast,
and his
fast.
line was providing nice holes for him, and he hits it and he runs with it, literally. But just solid 42-7 win. Again, on the road. These teams are doing it on the road for Kent City over Morley Stanwood.
Yeah, that's one of those too where you get the teams that might come up and challenge the big dog, and if you're the big dog, you don't want that team to even get a moral victory out of it, and hang around and have it be a game that you have to eke out in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
When you can just kind of reach down and put your hand on the opponent's head and keep them from even getting a swing in on you, that's it. When you can win a game like that start to finish, and that's a team that you figured might challenge you in the league, that again, like Scott said about the statement game, that's a statement when you win by that margin.
Yes, the Central State
CSAA.
Yes, Activities Association.
Well, with Geo Weeks surpassed the record that had been set by a guy by the name of Mike Hallman. Mm-hmm. So shout out to him, and the record stood, and now records are made to be broken.
Absolutely.
But he obviously was a
hell of a career, 3,000 yards.
Yeah,
and he's not even done.
Yeah, so
especially in this day and age of the spread, and
and then defensively, guys like Evan Jones and Max Hudson look real good for Kent. I was about to say Kent State.
Yeah.
Kent City. They both had, I think, 8 or 9 tackles apiece, and Evan Jones is also their running back, and I know that he scored on the ground.
I don't know if we talked. Do we know what division Kent City is in? I mean, we could look it up.
Yeah.
You can look it up. I'll move on, and because I'm just curious as to where they would roll. But again, another West Side team that has got a lot of great teams this season. So DeWitt and East Lansing got together. Sean and Matt got this one right. You and I thought East Lansing would hold up at home, and DeWitt came out a 37-0 win. Talk about a statement win.
Yeah, and another one of those.
Yes, this was huge. The CAAC Blue division was kind of up for grabs here, and DeWitt took it. And again, their defense, 4 turnovers forced on a pretty good East Lansing team. They just
they came out of the gate with maximum velocity, just really imposing their will on East Lansing, and again, made a statement. They blew their doors off.
Well, and when you don't allow your opponent to score, they haven't given up a point in CAC Blue play. I mean, there's. When you're
and this is the new dog. They're the new guy.
They're the new ones coming in, and granted, we talked about, I think in the preview show last week, about their tradition, of winning and their streak of conference titles. But obviously, you don't want that to end the first year you move into a new domain, so to speak. They kind of wanted to go in and announce their presence with authority, and they certainly did that. This was a fastball high and tight to the rest of the league, to use the baseball analogy.
Well, and you referenced they had never played in the regular season.
Yeah.
So they played in the playoffs. So beginning the rivalry this way, it's going to be real fun to see the bulletin board material next year, or if they meet in the playoffs, which very well could happen. So again, you could watch those highlights at statechampsnetwork.com right now. Grand Rapids South Christian went to Hudsonville Unity Christian, and this was you were the outlier in this one. You felt that South Christian, I think, would win in this one. I'm pretty sure. We took this one. Hudsonville Christian won convincingly, 38-14.
Yeah, that this was a interdivisional game, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Now when Unity Christian goes back to that green division, that's going to be fun for the next couple of weeks, because you've got a Unity Christian team that's 5-0, 2-0 in the division. Yep. You've got a Zeeland East team that's 4-1, 2-0 in the division. Zeeland West is 4-1, 2-0 in the division. Yep. So the next couple of weeks, you've got Zeeland West and Unity Christian play this week, and then It looks like in 3 weeks it's Unity Christian, last week of the regular season, and Zeeland East. So that'll be, if you get there. Yeah, those are fun when you get those 3-4 team races sometimes in a division, and you can get that divisional race goes right down to the final week of the season. That's fun because when it's over 3 weeks in, that's not nearly as exciting a race to watch.
Well, you think about it now. You got all these 5-0 teams now. They just need one more win.
Right.
They're guaranteed to be in the playoffs. They can begin to really kind of look ahead. They can refine things. They can work on depth. They could bring some kids up from JV that, might want to get a chance and see kind of where they're at. So you're in a real good position. And, for, again, another West Side school that
playing really good football.
And really good football.
What I liked about that, score sheet when I looked at it was the balance. They scored on offense, they scored on defense, they scored on special teams. I believe the scoring got started when Noah Sorensen took a punt back 65 yards, and the route was on, and just like you said, a lot of really strong football being played on the west side of the state, and they could give Metro Detroit a real run for their money for west side, east side bragging rights.
Right. So you can watch all those highlights at statechampsnetwork.com. All the games we just talked about are there. Some other games of interest that took place during this weekend, a week 5 of the football season. Livonia Churchill, Livonia Franklin. You guys were all on the Pat Town train. You should have known it was a Patriots weekend to get disappointed. I was the only one who thought.
You were on the Also Brooks train.
I stayed on it, and they went and had a win, although this was a shootout, no doubt about it. 41-35, Churchill wins at Franklin. Again, always a great atmosphere there. Really, again, I said in our previous podcast that Churchill needed this one more. Yeah. They're both now 3-2, but Churchill really needed this win. And the game we'll talk about next, with the results that took place there, I think it just shows that we're seeing parity right now. I think across
certainly.
the KLAA.
I just wanted to note Also Brooks' numbers. Drew Also Brooks,
yes,
Churchill quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Yep, baseball star.
Yep, his brother was the quarterback a few years ago. Went to Eastern Michigan.
Yep.
Great game by baby Also Brooks. 12 of 16 passing, 170 yards, 3 touchdowns. Then ran for 65 yards. So
he's a big boy too.
Yeah.
I mean, he's solid. He's put together well.
Yeah, he's like 6'2". Yeah. 210.
Right.
So
yeah, no doubt.
Great, great performance by Also Brooks and by Churchill to come out ahead in that shootout.
Yeah.
And he had 2 really good quarterbacks. Him and Calbert, Jake Calbert over at Franklin, who led his team into the state finals last year. So. It was like the shootout, the OK Corral, two gunslingers coming at each other. Taking 10 paces, turn around and pull the trigger. And also Brooks' trigger was a little faster than Calbert's trigger this week.
Yes, it was.
And you mentioned parity within the divisions, and I think when they brought in some new teams into the KLA and they kind of shifted who was in the East, who was in the West, I think what you ended up with, even though it was primarily done for geography reasons, I think what you ended up with is 2 divisions that in and of themselves have a lot of parity. Now, if you're looking at East versus West, I think East is probably the tougher division, and I think you saw that a little bit in Week 1 when they played crossovers, and you'll probably see that again when they play, the crossovers during the championship week, where the East will more than likely be, probably on the winning end of most of those. But it's nice when you have in the divisions, you have that East has got a lot of teams. I mean, a lot of teams that can beat each other up. It could have been one of those. We all thought Belleville was, just from a talent standpoint, maybe the best team in that division. But I don't think anybody thought that they were light years ahead of anyone. I mean, Dearborn-Fortson's right there. They just moved into the rankings this week, and both of the Livonia schools.
Happy that you put them in.
Yeah, and I told them
I know
to be
you
patient.
did. I know you did.
And now's their time.
Right.
And it could still be a divisional champion that has 1 or 2 losses. I mean, no one is thinking this is going to be a cakewalk for anyone going through. And you just look at the results in these matchups week to week, and you see how close these teams are, talent-wise and skill-wise.
Right. Well,
just one more note.
Sure.
Churchill, in addition to Alsobrooks and that high octane passing attack, they got a really, really good running game with Daryl Mason, and Mason ran for 115 and 2 scores. He's been looking good, running it up between the tackles the last couple weeks. So, Churchill's only 3-2, but they could be one of those teams that catches fire and is real dangerous as we head towards the stretch run of the season.
Right, and as we flip to the KLA West now, obviously we had the top 2 dogs, Brighton and Canton, getting together. And this was going to be really,
went to overtime.
Yeah, I know, exactly. It was just, it was the battle I thought it would be. Sure. Again, I was on the Stevie Wonder train, and Mr. Walker, I don't know what his numbers were in this game.
He was about 130, someplace in there.
Okay.
Very good game, but it was one where definitely that was the key. They were making sure that they had all eyes on, trying to and as you've mentioned before, it's so hard figuring out who has the ball. I was running into the same problems you were running into, and even on the goal line where there are only so many options, it's still hard to figure out where. But Brighton's defense did a very good job of bending but not breaking. They let them have a couple of big plays, but not many. Let them chip away at it. But it really turned in the third quarter when Brighton drove down the field, got a chance at a field goal, tied it up, and then on the ensuing pop-up kickoff that got muffed and they recovered, and they went deep on the very next play. And it was one of those sudden change, and you stick the knife in as fast as you can, and they got a touchdown there to go up, to go a 10-point swing from being down 10-7 to up 17-10. And then they were kind of holding on by their fingernails for the rest of the game. And they had Canton had a shot. They drove down the field, interception on the goal line. Brighton was able to wear some time off the clock, got it down to about 2 minutes. And then it forced Canton into a situation where they're not real comfortable in trying to run that kind of 2-minute. They still tried to run the ball. They still were effective at it. They managed the clock about as well as you possibly can when you don't have a wide-open passing attack. And they score as time ticks off the clock to send it to overtime. And then it ended up in overtime being a big interception by Zach Hopman.
That was the second pick of the game.
Second pick of the game.
He did a really good Darius Big Play Slay impression, and
nice.
Came up with 2 really big picks, including the one that set up the game-winning score.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny. They kind of playing off the Miami turnover chain. They have a big, huge, since they're the Bulldogs, they have a big, huge dog tag that he gets.
Nice. Okay.
So I asked him how long he was going to get to keep that, and apparently it's back on the shelf today. But 2 interceptions. Awesome. Yeah, first overtime, Brighton wins the toss, goes on defense, and chooses to see what they're going to have to do, and Hopman intercepts the third down pass. So, at that point they could have kicked the field goal, but like you mentioned, that wind on Friday was pretty iffy.
Yeah.
So since it was blowing across, they decided, okay, well, let's see what we can do, before we decide to kick that field goal to win the game. And Will Johns, who's been, one of those
starting
kids
to
who started
catch fire,
starting to get on the radar, started to get on the radar
wise.
when they lost in week 1 to Belleville. Runs it around right end on the very first play. So, it was a couple of times where one-play drives, especially because Canton was just chewing the clock all game long. I think they had a 17-minute to 6-minute advantage in time of possession in the first half. It was just...
It was like the Lions last night.
Yeah, it was the same game plan. Keep the other team on the bench, but Brighton was able to capitalize on those couple of opportunities with a couple of quick strikes, and they, go ahead, and then they, in overtime, they win on the first play.
I give all the credit to Brighton in this and for this case, because this was huge for them because, and when I say this, maybe you'll agree, this could literally, if they had lost this game, this could literally be the backbreaker. And the reason I say that, in week 1, Belleville has to do it in the last seconds to win that game.
Yep.
Brighton should have won that game. Yep. They blew it at the end. Here, Canton ties the game at the end of regulation. And if they lose this game after, like you had said, even though Canton had kind of dominated possession, Brighton should have won the game, right? Yep. Then it would have been, I think pretty devastating. But instead, they moxied up, you know what I mean? And they let that score happen. They didn't let it deflate them. They went out, got the pick in overtime, next play, win the game. Right. That's how you do it, drop the mic.
Well, and that's what I asked Coach Lemons. I said, how hard is it to keep your kids up, especially when you choose, your defense is just out there for a long drive, give up the game-tying score, put them right back out there.
Right.
How hard is it to get your kids? Because that could be, like you said, that could be
Deflating.
deflating.
And it gets in your head.
And
Hey,
he
that
said-
we have trouble finishing. We have trouble closing
Right.
games.
Right.
And he said, we've been here enough. Because
Okay.
if you recall, we talked about it in the preview show, 2 1-point losses last year, 2 3-point losses
Right,
last year.
right.
And it was, and really the Canton game
Right.
was the one lopsided one. And then the Belleville game
Yep.
at the beginning of the year where he said, we've been in this situations. The kids don't flinch anymore.
Right.
This is kind of, they're kind of used to this. So they just kind of went, and
Yeah.
went and won it, like you said.
They did it. So good for them. Good on them. Big win for Brighton as they kind of take the control a little bit of the West. They've got a they stay 4-0 in conference, and that's huge for them. And I think what they've got coming up next is they've got Northville. Coming up this weekend, and again. You've kind of got Plymouth, Northville, and Novi at the bottom of the division right now, all kind of sitting at 3-2, 2-3. Novi just 1-4. I mean, them got blanked by Plymouth this weekend, so it was kind of surprising. I expected them to be better. But again, all those teams, even a Salem team, can come up and bite you. So KLA across the board pretty good. We'll see how those teams translate to the playoffs. Jackson is 5-0 on the year. They go to Chelsea and win 29-20. Scott and you got this one right. I thought Chelsea might pull it out at home, but Jackson clearly one of the teams that is to be reckoned with.
When we talked a little bit about, new teams coming into a conference like DeWitt moving up and, and challengers, Grand Blanc is another one moving into a new conference wanting to make a statement.
Yeah.
And Jackson was kind of that same way because Chelsea had been the big dog on the block.
Right.
And if you get a chance to, go in and steal that big dog's bone.
Yeah.
And it's been, we mentioned, first 4-0 start in a billion years for
Right.
Jackson. First 5-0 start, I think, since the 50s.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's been a long time since they've had this kind of success.
Making Tony Dungy proud.
Yeah.
Wherever he is right now.
Yes. Is that where he
That's where he
went?
That's where he
Yep.
grew up. And
Yep.
the,
Yeah,
the,
that's right. I knew he
the-
grew up there. I didn't know he
The
was-
stadium is called Tony Dungy Stadium, where they play.
I'd like to get out there, that's for sure. Yeah, that's again, yeah.
He was a quarterback, by the way,
Yes.
and then he
Yes.
changed
And then changed to
corner,
DB.
defensive back for the when he got to college in the pro.
Yeah, they had some. I'm just kind of scrolling through their history, and they had some lean years.
Yes,
at
yes.
Jack, lots of L's in the '60s, '70s, '80s. So how exciting! I mean, especially when you're in an area that is dominated by Jackson Lumen Christie.
Yeah.
They've kind of up and down in the 2000s, but now again doing a really nice job the last couple of years. Well, I mean they just won 4 last year, but yeah, 5-0 is amazing. They take on a good Ypsilanti Lincoln team next
Yes,
week.
that will be a big one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's going to be a real interesting matchup and in that battle of that area. So good on Jackson. Paw went to 3 Rivers. We all took 3 Rivers. 3 Rivers.
You know what?
Is 5-0.
I'm looking right now. Tony Dungy did not play at Jackson.
Okay.
He played at Parkside.
Okay.
Okay.
Which probably doesn't exist anymore because
Parkside
I've never
exists
heard of it.
anymore.
So
Well, the stadium I know is called Tony
Yeah,
Dungy
that's
Stadium
cool.
because I've
Well,
covered
for
some
the area.
playoff games there.
Yeah, cool. But again, 3 Rivers goes 26-0. They take care of Paw, and Paw falls to 3-2.
And he played quarterback in college, not defensive back. He moved to defensive back in the pros.
Got it.
Played quarterback at Minnesota.
3 Rivers.
Just wanted to check myself.
And I agree. It's all
right.
good.
So,
What do-
3 Rivers with the dub, 5-0.
5-0. And
Playing good
the
football?
Yeah, and it's
The
going to be
Wildcats.
Yeah, it's going to be a couple weeks before the real showdown. It's not this week, but next week between 3 Rivers and Edwardsburg.
Right.
And actually, 3 Rivers won that game 21-18 last year. So that's kind of what we're setting
But
up
then
on
lost
a
to
collision.
them in the
lost in the
playoffs.
playoffs. Yep, in the district final. So we're kind of setting up for that collision course between the D4 powers there in the Wolverine Conference. In the Wolverine Conference, like we talked about, with the Downriver League, where it's big enough that every single week you're playing a divisional opponent or a conference opponent. So there's no out of conference play for these guys. So they've been playing since week 1, but 3rd straight shutout for 3 Rivers, and they've given up 28 points on the season. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's real good. That's real good. So, we do have some, quite a few 5-0 teams that are making a lot of noise. Well, go ahead.
They had a nice subplot to their game too. They returned their quarterback Jalen Hiveland, I think you pronounce it, and he came back and only threw over 200 yards and a couple touchdowns. Was 16 of I think 22. So he missed the previous 2 weeks
I
for
think he was injured week 2. Yeah,
the previous couple of weeks with an injury, and he came back and it was like making up for lost time and. Shook that rust off pretty quickly and started dissecting secondaries and or dissecting defensive backs, and they got their leader back, their signal caller back, and 5-0, and nothing but blue skies in front of them.
Yeah. They had a little preview last night of talked a little bit about the rivalry with Detroit Catholic Central and Birmingham Brother Rice. We've had Keegan Kohler on our watch list for the Mr. Football race. He did not disappoint Saturday night as he climbed over 100 yards again and a couple of scores. You keep him at 8 in the rankings, but anytime you beat your rival 21-0, you shut them out. First time in, 28 years?
Yeah,
something like that.
1990.
Yeah, 1990.
It was the first shutout in the series since 06, I believe.
But that was
09.
Rice. Yeah,
maybe.
that was Rice shutting out CC.
Right,
the first time.
24-0.
It just doesn't happen in this matchup.
No.
Well,
this was the 6th time I think I went back and counted that that CC had ever shut out.
I think it was
Rice.
6. I think it was 06.
Yep.
So clearly, Detroit Catholic Central is playing great ball, and Rice is trying to figure some things out.
Scott and I were both there, and it was 21-0 is almost deceiving, but not maybe for the reason you think. It could have been a lot more, and I think that's just because, CC left some points on the field.
They turned it over twice in the red zone, once on the goal line, like on the 1 yard line.
Twice on the goal line. Twice on the goal line. Once was going in from about the 9 yard, and then they set it up and they got a timeout right before a 4th down play, right before the half, forcing Rice to punt, block the punt, pick it up. It looked like they may have gotten in the end zone, but it was ruled down on the 1, so they hurry up, get up to the line, run a play so they can, punch it in and fumble it again. And so they knew that there were a lot of things from that game they still need to clean up, but it could have been a lot more. Rice didn't make it across midfield in the second half.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, at no point were they in any threat to break that shutout. The nice thing for CC as you watch them the last couple of weeks is obviously they too have had to make a change for injury at the quarterback spot, and Jack Benno has been thrust into a role where he's not going to have to do a lot.
He looked really solid.
He did.
Made a couple early errors in judgment that didn't end up. One was an interception in the red zone, but other than that, they were not they weren't backbreakers, and I had him tallied for about 170 yards in the air, and someone that is just moving around in the pocket, and someone that is elusive, can throw on the run, someone that is just kind of plucky. A guy that doesn't seem intimidated by his circumstances, and
because that's a hostile environment,
especially for a sophomore.
Yeah.
Well, and
we're hearing also from what kind of building on what I said last week, or questioning whether or not Marco Gendrich is going to be back. We're hearing now from the CC people that he will probably make it back before the playoffs.
Okay.
So it's not going to be a season ender for Marco, but. If anything, if this game, in my opinion, what I saw on Saturday gave me confidence that even if Gendrich doesn't come back, Benno can come in there and still, keep that team on track for a deep playoff run.
Yeah, talking to Coach Anderson after the game, and as well some of the seniors, Ryan Burney and Keegan Kohler, both talked about the maturity growth that he's had over the last 3 weeks. I mean, obviously, when he comes in for injury in the middle of that game against Toledo Central Catholic, it's already starting to get out of hand, and then he's thrust into a situation, not totally unprepared, but didn't expect to have to go in and play, and it that's one of those that goes pear-shaped in a hurry on them. And then last week he gets a chance for his first start, and the seniors kind of said, hey, coach wanted us to take him aside and say, we'll get you through this. And then this week they didn't really have to do that as much because you can already see kind of the confidence growing in a kid that is now 2-0 as a starter, which is pretty nice. 2-0 as a starter, and for a CC quarterback, 2-0 as a starter with a win over Brother Rice.
Yeah.
Right. Pretty nice to have on the resume.
On the road.
Absolutely.
Not at the Elm.
We know it's going to come down. I would say at this point you could pretty much kind of peg in it's CC and De La Salle in the Central. They're going to meet on October 12th. Yeah. Actually, Warren De La Salle has Davison the week before, so that's going to be an interesting matchup. CC's going to Ohio to take on COF Academy this week. No idea.
That's at home, but it's a brand new program.
Oh yeah, I think they're at home. Yeah.
Brand new program that's got kids from all over the place. It's one of those that is a little bit of a head scratcher. Where how are these kids getting there?
Like an IMG kind of thing in Florida. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so that'll be interesting. So there'll be some recruits out there.
Yeah. So Keegan Kohler had about $130 around there, rushing 2 touchdowns. I was just really impressed by a kid that doesn't look like that much, doesn't look that shifty when you first gaze at him, and then you watch him run, and he's zigging and zagging and dipping and diving, and we talked to Coach Anderson after the game, and he said he's just got excellent field vision. Yeah. He sees plays developing before. And is able to read his block so well and see things kind of before they transpire, and he can react to them in that way. And just looked really strong. He's gone over 400. He's gone over 100 yards in 4 of the 5 games. And then Ryan Burney. I'm going to nickname him the Bomb Squad. This kid blows up everything in his path, no matter whether we're talking offense, we're talking defense. I've said it before. He reminds me a little bit of a Jason Alessi from a couple years back with Brother Rice. Just one of those kids that is such an X factor, and doing it with his mind as much as he's doing it with his body. Just one of the smartest players you'll find back in the secondary, kind of quarterbacking the back of that defense for Catholic Central. I think he had 8 picks last year. This year he's already had a handful. He's already returned. I don't know if he returned a fumble, I think, for a touchdown and an interception for a touchdown. I think a couple weeks ago across the border. He had his first offensive touchdown of his career in the second quarter on Saturday. Caught a pass from Jack Benno, capitalizing on a interception by Sammy Baydoun's twin brother. We didn't even realize that there was a twin brother, but Nazim Baydoun, picked a ball in Rice territory and set that touchdown up. And Ryan Burney's he's an All-American lacrosse player, going to follow in his brother's footsteps, going to UD Mercy, but such. And
Burney's name's synonymous with Rice,
right?
Mm-hmm. The fact that John Burney, which is, I don't know if that's his father.
I'm not.
It's closely related.
Yeah, and then a couple of his brothers have been quarterbacks for Catholic Central. Mm-hmm. He's the first one to play solely on defense.
Yeah.
But all of his other brothers that I covered ended up playing lacrosse at UDM. And then guys like Lucas Hendershot, they're all Catholic League defensive lineman, was collapsing the pocket, and he had a big sack in the second half. And they were really getting a lot of production across the board. And like Matt said, it was 21-0, and probably could have been 35-0. Yeah. And Catholic Central is really off and running with a squad that can do a lot of damage.
Yeah, that's a team with the running game and the defense. They can probably beat 75% of the teams in this state.
Yeah.
Just flat out.
There you go.
What's going to take them past and being able to move into the playoffs is, whether Genrich comes back or Benno gets to a stage where they feel comfortable with him being able to beat teams, because there will be teams in the playoffs that they won't be able to beat with just those 2 items, and they'll have to have that passing game. And whether it's Benno who grows into that role or it's Genrich, but that will be the X factor going forward, to see how much they can develop that and how quickly that all comes together.
And Brother Rice just needs to figure some things out on offense right now, because they're having a lot of trouble moving the football. It just seemed like everyone was keen on Colin Gardner, who is, is a superstar of a football player. But if you have, defenses knowing that you're really the only guy that can hurt us, they can run their, scheme towards that. Yeah. Coach K didn't seem that worried about it when we talked to him about that after the game. He said he didn't really see anything schematically that was bothersome to him in that regard. But I was on the sideline with Catholic Central, and you could hear them saying, like, just bottle up Gardner, and you bottle up their whole offense.
And everything was to the perimeter. They really couldn't get anything going up the middle. They really couldn't get anything, any running. All the running was to the outside. So, they really need to kind of figure out a way to get some north-south going.
Yep, and if CC keeps playing defense like they are, they don't have to worry about doing a whole lot of scoring. Just get in a couple times, you're going to be all right. Final game before we go to break. Granville and East Kentwood got together at East Kentwood. This was, I think, the game we expected in terms of having a tight battle that went down to the end. 37-30 was the final. East Kentwood gets the win. We all picked East Kentwood in this one, especially
I said the Blakely Ballers were going to win, and then Keontae Blakely made me look smart and got the game-winning touchdown.
There you go.
Well, and for the most part, during that game, it wasn't him. It was the quarterback, Kyle Dent, who really hasn't gotten a lot of play. Who kind of it was one of those Granville's got that ground and pound attack, and they were really possessing the ball, get up 16-0, and basically East Kentwood hadn't even touched the ball at that point, and then Dent brings them back from that. They go ahead, then Granville ties it up, and then, as you said, Blakely gets the game winner. Shane Baker, I think, had 4 rushing touchdowns for Granville. That Granville team, I mean, it's just, if you want to rank 2 and 3 teams of how good they are in the state, they're going to be the top 2 and 3 team, because you look at who they've played, and they have played a murderous schedule, and they've been in every game. They have not gotten blown out.
Right, Clarkston, De La Salle, Forest Hill Central, at the time to come back to win, and now play the only win. Grand Haven was the only team that was on, and they put 73 points up on them. So Granville's is doing just fine, and it's just one of those things you got to play who is in front of you. And East Kentwood right now, sometimes you just catch teams that are playing as good as anybody. They'll have Hudsonville next week.
Kentwood had that
just
one.
Lost to Jenison.
Kentwood had that one bad game.
Yes, they did.
Yeah. And since then, since the Mona Shores game, but as we said before, that's the further East Kentwood goes with this run, the better that looks for Mona Shores at the beginning of the season. Because I think we kind of figured that East Kentwood was maybe the team that Mona Shores, has been throughout the season, the consistent one. Yeah. And East Kentwood has all of a sudden come back to where we thought they were going to be at the beginning of the season.
Right, and that was 48-38 game.
Yep.
So anybody's ball game, and again, Mona Shores is 5-0.
Right.
So they are and doing it impressive fashion. Like they just came off a 41-0 win over Kennewood Hills. So anyway, that is our recap from a very exciting Week 5. And again, we are definitely starting to see the pretenders and the contenders separating themselves, and a lot of really good football. A lot of teams doing really well through the first 5 games. Now it's going to get real interesting over the next few weeks. You're going to see teams, of course, next week, lots of them confirming playoffs already. And again, that's always a great position to be in when you hit the middle part of your schedule, already be inked into the playoffs. So we are going to take a timeout. When we come back, we're going to go over some of the changes in Matt Mowery's rankings, some of the movement, and kind of some of the non-movement, and just kind of where things are kind of bottled up towards the top. So that's where we're at. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
I want to be a dermatologist, and though a lot of universities tried to recruit me for basketball, Lawrence Tech had the science curriculum that I wanted. LTU's Southfield campus is a great place to learn, and the classes are small enough that I don't have to wait for office hours to talk to my professors. They're usually right by my side, challenging me and guiding me toward a successful future. Lawrence Tech. Possible is everything.
You ready, Darius?
Let's do it. Anybody want an autograph?
Autograph? We're here for the stuffed crust pizza.
Stuffed crust pizza? Hey, who do you think you are? End of the line, pal.
Flavor fanatics love stuffing their faces with our stuffed flavored crust. Get one for only $2 more on any large original round pizza.
Hungry? Howie's!
All right, thanks for coming back to Extra Point. We are going to now get into Matt Mowery's top 25 rankings in the state of Michigan. We're going to be talking about also a little bit later in the show some of our former high school football stars and what they're doing at the next level. They had some big performances this week. It's kind of one of those things I wanted to we talked about it a few weeks ago. I wanted to do it just so, there's always guys that you remember, and of course we remember in high school, and it's always great to see when they are making a dent at the collegiate level and beyond.
A lot of fine recollections of a lot of talented kids that have come through the mitten and then have gone to wherever they've gone and made a lot of noise at the college level, and then even going forward past that into the pro level.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see many more pros now because we've got a real good group of kids that are making big dents at the collegiate level that could have an opportunity at the next level. So the final level, as it were. All right, so Matt, we've got a lot of I believe the top 10 didn't do a whole lot of shifting.
I think it was top 13 all one. So it's one where the last couple of weeks it's just been kind of go down the list.
Yeah.
All those move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's.
Yep, you did drop Canton out of the top 25.
Canton dropped out of the top 25.
Hudsonville's out.
Hudsonville lost their first.
Grand Blank's
out.
So you lose one game, you're out of the 25.
Well, and those are ones that we said. Those it wasn't like it was a probationary period, but they had really big games coming up, so they might be in and out kind of things, and they're still right on the cusp too. They can certainly move back in if they knock off somebody else, but it was time to get Dearborn Fordson in there. They have been right on the door, and part of the reluctance to put them in was not that I didn't think they were a good team, because I saw that right at the opening week against Howell that's a team with a lot of weapons and a lot of speed, but you kind of look at their resume and they'd done what they had to do, but they were also beating some teams that were kind of the lower division in their own conference. Yep. But they've motored on. They've kind of
they've got Belleville next.
Yeah, and that's the big one, and that's the one that they've been pointing at too.
Yes.
That's the huge one.
Yes, they will jump a lot of slots if they win that game.
Yeah, that's the one that they really get the opportunity to make some noise. And you mentioned that the next couple of weeks. Next week is kind of about all of those 5-0 teams getting a chance to get into the playoffs. There are quite a few pretty big games, but it seems like the really big games are the week after. But this Belleville Fordson one is definitely near the top of the list of about 10 or so that I really identified as these are key games for either divisional races or for kind of a postseason. But that Belleville Fordson one
that's going to be good.
Yeah.
Well, and again, it's so hard to pull teams out, put teams in. Again, if you lose one game, you can be out. You put Mount Pleasant into the thing, but if you look at your 10 others to keep your eye on, you got 5-0 South Lyon, who is chomping at the bit.
5-0 Jackson.
5-0 Jackson. Swan Valley's 5-0. Jackson Lumen Christi's 5-0. Pewamo Westphalia's 5-0. New Lothrop. Edwardsburg. I mean, Grosse Pointe South. Grosse Pointe South. I mean,
not getting any love after beating Warren Mott.
Yeah.
By a ton.
Yes.
And it's a lot of teams that have been knocking on the door, and Fordson's been knocking on the door for a couple of weeks. Mount Pleasant's been knocking on the door for a couple of weeks.
And for all those choices, why Mount Pleasant?
Well, and Mount Pleasant kind of was in the same boat as Fordson a little bit, in that you look at their opponents, and if you stack up the win-loss records of their opponents, they aren't as great.
They're not in that SVL South.
Yeah,
in the
SVL North, and Mount Pleasant's key games are coming up, where the next couple of weeks they have Midland this week, also unbeaten in divisional play, and I believe Dow the next week or the week after. I would have to look that up.
Right.
But with Mount Pleasant, basically what I looked at was their defense has been absolutely stellar. They've allowed 22 points this season. People allow that in a quarter.
5 games.
5 games in, they've allowed 22 points. And they allowed Bay City Western 77 total yards in their game, a 41-0 shutout to go 5-0 for the first time since 2011 for Mount Pleasant.
Yeah, long time.
77 yards, 66 of that came on Bay City Western's last drive when Mount Pleasant had the backups in. So at that point, they had held them to 11 yards.
Right.
That defense, and we talked about Tyler Huneman early in the season, one of the defensive factors on that team. Now, they're going to have to prove it over the next couple of weeks if they want to stay. They have the two Midland teams, which are probably the strength of the Valley North or the Red Division with them this year, and it's kind of a prove-it couple of weeks. I mentioned this to somebody else a couple weeks ago. Back when I was up in Mount Pleasant and we had the rivalry between Alma and Mount Pleasant that had dated back eons, and it was unfortunately it was a little lopsided at times toward Mount Pleasant, which is the bigger school. Right now, Mount Pleasant 5-0, Alma 5-0. That would be fun if they were still playing for the oil can. Unfortunately, conference restrictions with Alma being in the TVC and Mount Pleasant being in the Saginaw Valley, they don't play anymore. But if they could unretire that oil can for 1 year and play a grudge match again, those were fun games to cover, those trophy games, and that one was very fun. But yeah, Mount Pleasant has been most impressive with that defense. And Jason McIntyre, who took over that program a number of years ago, has really turned a program when they were stuck in the Mid-Michigan B or Mid-Michigan A and kind of out in the middle of nowhere. It was one of those where they were just kind of a square peg, and it wasn't doing anything for them, playoff-wise, because every once in a while they'd sneak into the playoffs and then just get bombed, even though they had a pretty good talent. And now that they're in the Saginaw Valley League and they're really getting kind of it rolling, Jason McIntyre has 300 wins now. He got that earlier in the season, and that's been a program that's made a couple of runs towards state finals and state semifinals over the last couple of years. Yeah. In a league that all of a sudden you have to rise up to the competition of the league. Instead of playing, when they were back in the Mid-Michigan A, they were playing a lot of smaller schools that they should beat, and they were beating them, but it didn't really make them any better. And now they've kind of had to rise to the level of the Saginaw Valley, and it's really helped them. So we'll see over the next couple of weeks how that helps them. Brighton's another one that moved in. They've got they've got to kind of hold serve the rest of the way to play their way into the KLA championship game. And Fordson, as we mentioned, has the huge one with Belleville. So they have an opportunity to control their own destiny on the field this week. But all three of those are, kind of the ones that we moved in because they were the ones knocking on the door, and now they've got to figure out how to stay there.
Yeah. Well, we've got Cass Tech still 1. Muskegon still 2. Again, Muskegon led 28-0 after one quarter in their
49-0 at the half. Yeah,
63-6 final. Cass Tech's outscored their opponents 180-7. You have here over. So it's just But Cody will be a better game for Cass Tech this week. So
sure.
That will. They'll have to play hard. I mean, I still
better as in they'll win by 4 or 5 touchdowns instead of 6 or 7.
Most likely.
No disrespect to the Norman Nasties over at Cody.
That's right. So, Belleville sitting at 3. That's a solid 3.
There weren't even a whole lot of games in the top 10 where teams really got tested. Clarkston, you were at that game, Scott. They had a pretty good game, but again, did what they had to do and got past A&T at the end. Chip Valley obviously had Dakota. Catholic Central had the grudge match against Rice, but De La Salle had a pretty easy game against St. Mary's. Oak Park had a relatively easy game against Athens. The King and Cass both had relatively easy games. Belleville had one that was an easy game this week after having had quite a few of them up till that point that have been closer.
Right.
They kind of had the able to relax and have a relatively easy game. But another one that's coming up will be River Rouge Harper Woods this week, which is going to be a fun one. And that's kind of the prove it game for River Rouge. They've had kind of an easy slate of the last couple of weeks.
I will say, the last thing we'll talk about here before we go to another commercial is, Clarkston going to Southfield. Mm-hmm. And winning, 31-20. We talked about Anthony Rumpf a little bit in
30-21.
Oh, was it 30-21?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all right.
Because it was 27-21. late in the fourth quarter, and Clarkson had to kick a field goal and then stave off a drive by A&T late. And
we'll get that corrected.
Yeah.
Not a problem. But anyway, again, we talked about Anthony Romph a little bit in the recruit report with Allen. And, he had a good game.
This was the first time that I've seen him, there was a lot of hype about him in the offseason. First game of the year, had some growing pains. It was his first varsity start. And then I hadn't seen him for 3 weeks or 4 weeks. And he was as advertised on Friday night.
He's got a great motion.
Yeah, he threw.
Looks the part.
He threw for 240 and 3 touchdowns. He ran for 100. His 240 and 3 touchdowns could have easily been close to 304 touchdowns because he had a 40-yard, what looked like a surefire 40-yard touchdown, which was just a perfect pass, falling into the hands of a receiver as he was crossing the goal line. And Josh Luther, the defensive back for Clarkson, made the best play of a cornerback that I've seen in 5 weeks, where at the last second, just with his tippy, with the tips of his fingers, just flicked it away, and that would have made it just a field goal game in the fourth quarter. But so you take that away. Yeah, he also had some drops. Yeah, just great game from Romph and something really to build on.
And going against that kind of defensive line and the pressure he was going to get, that was going to be the real. How was he going to handle that? And apparently he stepped up his game. Granted, in a loss, but everybody loses to Clarkson. You know what I mean? That's just how it is. They get it done.
But I mean, they had
field goals really that end up being
by Tristan
really
Matson, one of the best kickers in the state. We talked about him. Matt and I on our rundown video last week.
Yep.
You want to talk about a kid who's just cool, calm, and collected. I mean, he's coming in there, kicking. He kicked a 42-yarder and a 45-yarder, and just he's like making a Rocky IV reference. He's Ivan Drago, just just ice cold coming out there. Just another day at the office, and.
And that's huge for the
weapon.
Playoffs.
Yeah,
I mean,
big
come
weapon
on,
for
man.
Clarkson.
That's going to be,
And then Jake Jensen's getting better every week. The senior signal caller for Clarkson. Obviously, they got the two-headed monster and Jake Billette and Jake Honstetter in the backfield. They both went over 100 yards again, rushing. But Clarkson is just again. It should really shouldn't be a surprise.
No,
Kurt Richardson
I'm
does
not surprised
such
anymore.
a great job, and
I'm on the Wolves bandwagon. I'm not getting off. I'm riding that train.
I can foresee this team, putting together another run and being at Ford Field, and Matt was getting grief from some people earlier in the year for ranking them, and they don't
My
just like
intelligence and IQ were being questioned.
just like last year. They don't
there is
have
some merit to that.
Well, I mean, if you're going to question it about something else, though.
In terms of upperclassmen, they don't have any really college recruits at all.
No. Right.
They got the 2 blue chippers, the sophomores, Dellinger and Spindler, but just like last year, throw those stars after the rankings, the 3 stars, the 4 stars, just throw them out the window. It doesn't matter. Clarkson's just a great high school football program.
Yeah, and I don't think they're really going to get tested. I mean, Oxford has just came off a loss. They only put up 8 points. To Rochester Adams, who we like. Yeah. But Clarkson beat Adams pretty thoroughly.
Yeah, it was 38.
Oak Park's the final week.
Oak Park, that'll be fun.
So that'll be fun. So Clarkson Oak Park will be a good one to really kind of see where they're at going in.
Interdivisional game, so no meaning other than just get us ready for the playoffs.
Absolutely. And you've got to play. There's nothing better, and I love that they do these games because they always end up working out, having a really tough game before the playoffs, so that your you really feel like you're heading in, ready to go. So,
but for my money. I haven't seen Muskegon live yet, so I'll reserve judgment. I obviously
send you over there.
you can watch the tape and watch the highlights and look at the stat sheet, and you can be pretty amazed. But for me, in the 5 weeks, the best team I've seen by far are the Clarkson Wolves, and I wouldn't have believed you if you told me that. Leading up to the season.
Well, again, and when we get to the PSL championship, and we see Cass and King go up against each other, that's going to be, the real measuring stick on where those teams I think are going to be at. Because again, they should be healthy because they get to play everybody in these blowout wins that they have. And
as high school football players, I will put Honstetter and Billette against Mangum. and Lou Nichols at Cass Tech. I mean, I think that's the level that those two running backs are playing at right now for Clarkson.
Fantastic. So, yeah, I agree. Muskegon is a team I need to see. They've got Mona Shores on October 12th. That should be a real one that would be fun to see live. That would be cool. So,
but I would take Clarkson against Belleville. I would take them against Cass, and I would take them against. No, Key and Cass would be a good game, but I would take Clarkson versus Belleville.
Okay, so that's where we're at right now. After week 5, we could change that to as it comes. Again, it's all about health. It's all about continuing to just roll. But I agree, you cannot. They are the defending state champs, and until you beat them in the biggest division, they are right there. But as far as rankings go, I see where you have them. I see that that rationale.
Yeah, we started him at 10, I think.
Yeah, exactly. That top 5, I mean, again, Belleville Fortson's huge this week, so we'll get into that in the forecast. So that's going to be on Thursday. We're going to take another time out here. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about our former high school stars making an impact at the level. Quick segment as we wrap up another edition of Extra Point, so stay with us.
Today we'd like to talk about MHSAA concussion protocols and an insurance program that the association provides for unpaid bills following a concussion. First, game officials have no role in determining whether or not an athlete has sustained a concussion. All the official can do is advise the head coach of the possible injury. School personnel, which have the ultimate responsibility for the child, make the determination to remove the player from the playing surface and, if necessary, from further activity. A student athlete removed and withheld from the rest of a contest may not return to play that day and is required to have an unconditional medical release to return after that. And for those families who have unpaid medical bills for concussions sustained during a school practice or competition after personal and school insurance coverage is used up, the MHSAA offers gap insurance of up to $25,000. Find out more about concussion resources on our website at mhsaa.com.
All right, thanks for coming back to Extra Point. This is our final segment of the show. Something I've wanted to do, I'm glad we're doing. And it's just kind of a fun thing where we talk about some former star standouts of Michigan high school football making an impact at the next level. And this one is all about quarterbacks, and it's all about what they did this past weekend in their college games. So you mentioned that to me, I sent a text out and thing, and you came right back that J. Rue Campbell is getting it done.
That's
over
what's
at,
really one of the
Ferris State.
feel-good stories that maybe the state has seen in a long time. Maybe the whole Division II landscape across the nation right now.
Yeah.
What J. Rue Campbell has been able to resurrect his career, resurrect his image, and what he's doing at Ferris State right now.
You could do a film on his kind of life and his struggle right now. And again, I root for the kid. And
he's having just a riveting performance after performance this year, and Ferris State's ranked in the top 10.
Yeah,
number 1, I think.
No, well, the last poll I saw him had him 5th.
Okay,
they had him 5th, but again, another win, at Northern Michigan.
Because we didn't know a couple of years ago, we didn't know if this kid. I mean, all due respect to the Campbell family, but a couple of years ago, we didn't know if this kid was going to be behind bars or behind center.
I know. And he's gone to community college, and he's really worked his way back.
He worked his way to get this opportunity, and he's doing things numbers-wise that he was doing in high school. When you see it's like video game numbers.
5 touchdowns on the weekend, 3 in the air.
Well, it is a great story, absolutely, and that was the first one that I texted you. The second one that I texted you, he's almost stealing the thunder from another guy in that same league. In Bart Williams from Grand Blanc, who was an all-state quarterback as a senior, threw 36 touchdowns.
Grand Blanc, absolutely.
From Grand Blanc. He had 5 touchdowns passing this week, moved past Kurt Ains as the Grand Valley career touchdown pass leader, and he's 23 yards behind Cullen Finnerty for pass yards. When you're moving past names like
382 this weekend.
when you're moving past names like that, we're not talking a low bar that you're jumping.
Yeah.
Those bars are high.
Yeah.
And the difference that he has, if you're looking down the road, some of those quarterbacks who came through the Grand Valley system have been, as we talked about earlier, a little bit of a square peg, some 5'11 guys, some guys who were maybe...
Bart Williams, 6'5".
Yeah, 6'6". 6'6", 230 is what they list him at now.
Yeah.
That's SID tape measures tend to be a little hot, but...
Generous.
Yeah, so he might be 6'5", but
Yeah.
even then, prototype NFL size. So this is going to be one of those guys who probably gets an invite to the combine, probably gets to show off, and then he'll be the question will be arm strength and all of those kind of things that usually come at a D2 quarterback. But you look at the numbers and you look at the size and physical presence, that kid's going to get a shot.
Yeah.
Just a quick comment on J. Rue Campbell and something I noticed when he was in high school that's translating right now at the college level is that, the touch that he has on the pigskin, whether you're throwing the deep route or the intermediate route or even just, the bubble screens, he just, that's kind of a thing that you can't touch or that you can't touch. Yeah. That's something that you can't teach.
Yes.
And, it's something that, it's no matter where you are and how you're playing, that's something that you can rely upon. Whether you're playing at the high school level, you're playing at the college level, or you're playing at the pro level. If you have that in your back pocket, it's going to bode well for you. And right now, it's boding really well for J. Rue Campbell. And he knows how to put that ball right where it needs to be.
Yeah, we had him in our top 25 quarterbacks over the last 25 years. We got guff for that. Just based on
I thought you had to. I said we had a meeting, and I said
dude,
you could not put him in there.
I agreed with you again.
But there were
we
other
had
people.
never seen a freshman at the D1 level take his team to the promised land, a team that had constantly underachieved, for years, and to be able to do that was. I think granted they were in the semifinals the year before when he got there, but I mean to be able to just take the team and do what he did, it was great. I'm glad, good on Ferris State and what a program Anise has built over there. It's unbelievable.
Talk about somebody who's going to get an opportunity.
Yeah, it was Grand Valley, not too long ago. That was the juggernaut.
Yep.
Now it's turning into Ferris State, and you get recruited by Ferris State
in both big sports, in basketball too. They won the national championship in basketball.
Deshaun Thrower playing for both.
Yeah, and I'll say one more thing about Bart Williams, who we were talking about. You said he, has the career passing victory. He's got 118 touchdown passes, and he's still got 7 regular season games to go.
He might bury that.
Yeah, so that's going to be pretty amazing. Yeah, that 114 was the record. Yeah, he's gonna own it. He right now is in second place. He's just 23 yards behind passing yards. So 10,892 is where he's at right now. And so again, they're 4-0 is Grand Valley, and they're doing good. So and they had I saw that they had 16,671, third largest crowd in Grand Valley State history for the Michigan State game.
They pack them in.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Look what Tyree Jackson's doing over in the MAC at Buffalo.
I have him on my list here. Tyree Jackson. If you did not see that, Buffalo beat Rutgers 42-13. This was at Rutgers. He started the game 0 for 3, had a pick. And then it was like, because he had come in on fire. Yeah. And Tyree Jackson, about midway through the second quarter, just went off. And just in the second quarter, 131 yards, 711 passing. They led 35-6 at the break. He finished for 263, 3 touchdowns. And he's just, it was like fluid motion.
He's chucking and sledgehammering. Cornerbacks and safeties everywhere right now.
He was one of our Mr. Football finalists, I believe.
Yeah.
And he is...
the Bulls are 4-0.
Yeah. Yeah. Basketball team, too.
Yeah, right? With Nate Oates.
Nate Oates over there. So, and, they've had a run in the tournament. So, good on them. Good on them and good on Tyree. John Wasink, I wanted to mention, from Grand Rapids South Christian, playing at Western Michigan. And... it was super hot. They were at Georgia State. We had kind of nice temperatures here. It was in the 90s there, and obviously a really tough environment. Started out kind of slow, too. Missed on the first couple passes. Went 20-25 for 236 yards, 3 touchdowns, and including a 2-minute drill to close out the first half. And he went 6 of 7 for 69, had a 24-yard touchdown. Keyshawn Watson, and so good on him in their 34-15 win over. They played Georgia State. I'm sorry, Georgia Tech.
Not Georgia Tech.
Georgia State.
Georgia
State. Panthers.
Yeah.
Georgia State. There it is. So good on him.
Not the rambling rats.
Yeah. No, that's right. So good on that. And I did want to say just one other thing too. DPJ. Everyone's saying DPJ and Donovan Peoples.
I told
everyone move that he put on the punt
that
return was
you have
artistry.
to watch the punt.
I
return
told everyone
from
in
Saturday.
the off season, just pump the brakes on calling DPJ a bust.
Yeah.
You know, there are plenty of players that just take a little bit of time to develop at the next level, but he has the type of skill set that's not going to disappoint, and you're seeing it, especially these last 2 weeks. He's a playmaker.
Yeah.
He's going to be able to make plays. I think that his struggles last year, he had some dropsies, but you know, when you got to go, when you're a receiver expected to hit the ground running as a true freshman,
like Cody White did.
Okay, so that was
saying,
no, but that was hurt. You know, the perception wise, that was hurting him because Cody White, who was lesser thought of at the high school level, was going and doing what he was doing in East Lansing. People were looking at DPJ in Ann Arbor, being, why aren't you doing what Cody White's doing? Well, one of the reasons was Cody White had Brian Lewerke, and DPJ had 5 different quarterbacks.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
So
and now he and Shea now have a relationship.
So
There's
no
question about it. The symmetry is there.
I'm not surprised. A lot of people were really down on him in the offseason and already kind of declaring him a bust. And it was way premature. And he's proven all those guys wrong. And I think by the end of the day, at the end of his career at Michigan, he's gonna be in the record books. I'm not saying that he's gonna be the best receiver to ever come through there, but his name's gonna be listed on a handful of those records when he's done.
Like somebody who can definitely go, like a Mario Manningham who's gone to the next level and has had success. He's
Derek Alexander.
Exactly. So even Braylon, had was at the next level and made.
I mean, there's a reason he was a 5-star and the number one receiver in the whole country.
Right. We had him runner up in Mr. Football.
Yeah.
We took Cody White in that, but. He certainly ended his high school career in outstanding fashion. That catch against Utica Eisenhower was amazing. He had that extra point catch against Saline early in the playoffs.
And Cody
against Josh Jackson and Saline.
Cody ended up having the best season of any Michigan State freshman receiver.
I know.
I believe so.
Yes.
Yep.
So that's a kudos to Cody. That doesn't necessarily speak against DPJ.
Look.
Well, and he's also in a system too where he wasn't a featured receiver or anything. He had 2 receivers on the outside that were. He just got to be the extra guy. I
am convinced at the end of Peoples-Jones' tenure with the University of Michigan, you're going to be able to have a highlight reel of just him on special teams.
Yeah.
Not even talking about what he's going to do on, as a receiver. And again, if you got to watch the 60-yard punt return for the touchdown against Nebraska on Saturday.
And then their other starting receiver is a local guy too, Grant Perry, who played at Brother Rice and won state championships and has developed into a nice possession receiver for Michigan, and another one of these kids that didn't get a lot of recruiting attention and had to kind of cobble offers together, and then at the very end of his senior year, Northwestern came in, and then eventually Michigan came in. So another example of for these kids that are getting down on themselves because they don't have the offers they want right now as a junior or a senior. It's another example of someone that things will work out the way they're supposed to work out.
And I mentioned John Wasink and what he's doing he's also got Drake Harris there with him now. So
from Michigan,
the Grand Rapids South Christian, the Grand Rapids Christian kind of rivals, got that connection going. Drake Harris obviously just didn't work at Michigan. And him not being able to play his senior year is really
the injury hampered him into college, and
it sure
just
did.
was never able to.
So it's good to see him finishing off and making things happen. He's having a nice little season out there, and is a nice target for Wasink. So all right, so that is the Extra Point podcast for this week. Again, if you happen to run across, some outstanding performances from some of our former high school athletes, please go to the contact page and send me an email. You can just hit us up on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. You can do that too. And we'll talk about them, because it's always fun to get caught up with what some of these guys are doing. And again, with red shirts and things like that, sometimes a kid's
like 6 years later.
Yeah, and he's playing, And so, again, I mentioned LTU. Tyler Kolk had another insane season. He went to Chip Valley. He hasn't played football in 4 years. He took a Mormon mission for 2 years and then came back here. And last year they didn't play. So, he's now getting a chance to do his thing. So, again, thanks for watching the podcast. This show premieres every Monday at 5 o'clock. We'll also have the football forecast on Thursday at 3. So make sure you check it out. Again, we'll talk about the games coming up this weekend. We'll give you an update on if anything is changing in our Hungry Howie's Mr. Football race. So that is something for you to check out as well. And again, talk to us on any social media platform you like. Hope you enjoy the show. We will see you on Thursday.